The journey that you've each taken that has brought you to this moment, this summit in your high school career, reminds me of a story of two mountaineers. The mountain is already as big as it will ever get. You and me, however, we're still growing. So each of the graduates will be like one of the two mountain climbers when you graduate from Webb School. Our next speaker entered Webb in the 4th grade. He too has a long list of accomplishments during his time at Webb School. His passion is robotics, and he's been on the robotics team since 8th grade. This year he served as co-captain of the team. But his passion for robotics reaches well beyond the gates of Webb School. He has taken his robotic talents to the Boys and Girls Club for the past 3 years. He was on the winning Scholars Bowl team this year, as well as a member of our newly established Research Methods program. Academically, he's also done quite well. He's been selected as a Danforth Scholar at Washington University in St. Louis, where he will be attending this fall. He's a National Merit Scholar, member of the Cum Laude Society, recipient of the Maureen O'Donnell Memorial Award for Latin 4 years in a row, member of the Mu Alpha Theta Honor Society, first place winner in the Rhone State Academic Festival for his non-fictional personal narrative. Most recently, he was the recipient of the Julia Dossett Webb Scholar Award. When asked how Webb has influenced his life, he says, "The students and teachers I've met at Webb have encouraged me to push myself to accomplish and study more than I would have ever done alone. At Webb, I've become more passionate in my strongest subjects and interested in what lies outside of my passions." Join me as we welcome to the podium our second salutatorian, Spencer Williams.
Educational careers, especially high school and college, are often compared to climbing a mountain, with all of the hard work and collaboration that entails. I've found that during the climb, we are often too out of breath to acknowledge our teammates. Now that we've hit a point where we can rest, and the climb is almost over, I want to rectify that and recognize a group of people who may soon be called basement men. They appeared when needed most, and I believe I could even climb a real mountain with their assistance. They came even before I knew about the basement, as I entered the upper school for the first time. I felt lost at the beginning of my freshman year, with no idea how the next 4 years of my education would shape up. For someone who had already picked a discipline of engineering, this uncertainty was concerning. My only leads were to continue band for art credit, keep Latin for the language credit, and stay on the robotics team. What ultimately helped me use those leads to form the start of a successful high school experience was that I wasn't the only one interested in those subjects, and, equally important, I wasn't the only one to arrive at the science building and immediately look up. The lobby was clamorous that day, filled with excited chatter. I don't like large groups, so the open stairway cutting through the crowd caught my interest. My eyes traced the steps, spending that fraction of a second praying not to recognize another human. Satisfied that I had found an isolated place to spend the first few disoriented minutes, I went upstairs, only to find that the loft wasn't empty. The crowd was thinner, though, a more welcome sight. Once I realized I knew a few of the people here well, and that their attempts at a half Windsor or four in hand were just as sad as my own ties knot, I relaxed. We had common interests and inexperience. I reminded myself that we were all the same level of lost, as freshmen traditionally are. That year, I learned that sometimes it's okay to be lost, as long as there's time to find yourself. We would gradually become better able to navigate high school, but that meeting in the loft worked for everyone, so we kept coming to the same place. Those of us who were regulars eventually took the name Loft Boys. We spent free time before, during, and after school there, and it became a sort of second home, even if the science building would belong to the new freshmen the next year. Entering sophomore year, the Loft Boys were indeed evicted, and we had to move into the upper school building, reeling from the loss of the loft. We didn't want to be referred to as simply boys, so we needed a home. Most of us agreed with little discussion that the commons would be too loud for our tastes, and the sophomore locker room was claimed quickly, so only the back part of the building remained. We weren't thrilled with the long walk to lunch, but the journey was worthwhile. The convenient door to the outside and the level couches were perfect. There was just enough furniture following the walls to accommodate our whole group, as though the place were prepared specifically for us. We knew we could call this place home for the next 3 years, so we moved in and took the name that would come to define us. the Basement Boys. During our freshman year, the term Loft Boys was used occasionally when people wanted to classify the students into different groups in the vein of the Breakfast Club. After a year of high school, we didn't need the simplicity of social classification. We had already made great progress in finding where we belonged and what we cared about. The Basement Boys label, at first created as a group message name, instead became an identity. Whenever I saw a fellow downstairs dude approach this podium to deliver a chapel talk, I felt like a proud American watching one of our Olympic athletes win. 10th grade was the year I learned the meaning of camaraderie. We contended to better not only ourselves, but the Basement Boys as a whole. It felt uplifting to watch a friend succeed, but spending our time in the same space, we became more like family. The skill of acquiring a family will be critical in dorm life, where my natural family won't be around. It was good fortune to master it then. With the exception of senior year's college applications, my junior year was the most intense period of my life. Numerous options for AP courses became available, and I dove into them. Unquestionably, the most difficult part was that I couldn't decide between biology and physics, so I chose both. I was and am still fascinated by both subjects, but my year started out similarly to running a marathon after training for a 5K. The workload may have proven unsustainable if I'd been running alone. Instead, I had partners who wouldn't slow down to let me catch up. None of my friends let their grades slip in more demanding classes, creating more motivation to keep up the pace. The competitive nature of the Basement Boys prevented any of us from giving up on our modest dreams of crushing some AP exams. Our hopes for the robotics season that year were a little less modest. By that point, the crawl space companions were among the more experienced team members, so we controlled the design and build process more than before. Our ambitious plans were the cause of an emotional roller coaster, at least for me, but the brief episode that best summarizes how we functioned occurred later in the season. One of the challenges that year involved making a 100-pound pile of metal we called a robot climb a rope. We had tried for weeks to make it happen, but none of the systems were even close to working. Fed up with failure, Jack, Evan, and I decided to work together one night to finish it. It was past time to be in the lab, but I drew up the main part that we need on my laptop as a piece of bent sheet metal, and the two of them helped hash out ideas over Skype. Due to the past frustration, late hour, and difficult geometry with a chain tensioner, I was exhausted and ready to give up. The mostly coherent yelling of my friends on Skype kept me working to finish the job, even with my doubts. I may have started the session ready to surrender to sleep, but I ended the night excited with them, certain a robot would climb the rope. When the completed part we designed arrived, we proudly presented our magnum opus of the season to a surprised Dr. Lowry. Rather than praising our vast intellect and dedication to the task, she reacted as though a child had just shown her a piece of macaroni art. To her credit, at that point, the macaroni art would have done just as well climbing the rope as I was. It bent like macaroni under any real stress. But a few fixes later, it could climb. Maybe our delirious post-11 p.m. engineering wasn't perfect, but the push to keep working was necessary to make the climber eventually happen. Breaking the trend of everything working, my senior year, the first few months, was filled with regret. Filling out college applications, I was concerned that I hadn't done enough. My resume was by no means empty, but it frequently crossed my mind that colleges didn't care about the Basement Boys, or any time I had spent with friends. I felt guilt over every hour I had spent on social events that should have been spent working. What if the loft had been empty that first day I came to high school, and what if it had stayed that way? Maybe I would have poured myself further into my studies with no active basement to distract me. Would I have had the motivation? I honestly don't know the answer to that question, but no matter what additional studies I might have followed, my regrets have vanished. I know it wouldn't have happened. I would not have learned to trust and work with such a reliable team. I would not have worked the extra hours to be a part of the best performance of Mexican hat dance Webb has ever heard. I would not have had the experience or material to write my best scholarship essays, and I would not have made contact with a bright, dedicated group of people. What I've accomplished here, what you've accomplished here, we did with the help of our friends. I've been fortunate enough to know a group of people as supportive as the Basement Boys, ultimately guiding me to achievements as little as a 4,000-word airbud analysis, and as large as making the playoffs at the first Robotics World Championships. Friends might have distracted me from a level path of more studiousness, but they pulled me up this mountain. Now that we're at the summit, we can look around and decide which peak is our next destination, with a better view than we would have on the ground. During the next 4-year climb, be open to detours and keep the contacts you make along the way. I've met plenty of future engineering colleagues, but I also know who to call if I need projects acted or animated. You will certainly encounter someone who rushes to the top alone, but when they go high, it may be time to go low. The hardest part of building a skyscraper is not the top floor, but the foundation everything rests on. The basement has been a solid structural and personal foundation for the last 4 years. Make sure to build your own foundation for the coming months, years, and decades.
join me in once again congratulating these two for their accomplishments.